free, Vinny Eastwood, and it should come up if you're lucky. Now, hopefully the backup channel will be running in any moment now. There we go. And so let's start the show. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Vinny Eastwood Show. I am not a credible journalist. I'm an incredible journalist. And my very special guest is Billy Te Kahika from the Advanced New Zealand Public Party. Billy, welcome back.
Thank you. Great to be back as ever on a Tuesday afternoon.
I was just thinking about how much stress there is out there for everybody during this lockdown period and whatnot. I'm just wondering if you're actually under stress with this kind of thing. Tell us your troubles.
Well, I don't know where to begin. I've got such a long line of them, a long list of it. It's really just dealing with the amount of public concern that I hear about on a day-to-day basis. I guess a tsunami/avalanche of communications from people across New Zealand and around the world, actually, at times, from people that are just very, very concerned, very distressed. They know that there's something not right with the government. Some of them know exactly what's wrong. Some of them can see that democracy and our freedoms have been destroyed along with our economy. Some of them are worried about their livelihoods. Some people are just absolutely desperately afraid that this government's going to force vaccinate them, and that's really disturbing because I had one family say that they were very, very distressed and had contemplated a suicide pact, which really had me concerned and distressed. So I took that to light straight away to let these people know that, and other people that are concerned, that there are places to go to if you need help or counselling, or just to reach out to a brother or sister to help you through your distress and things like that. But we all get distressed. Other than seeing that from people, for me, the distress is around, just understanding what's been aimed at us and what's coming out in the pipeline, and trying to figure out how the heck we're going to stop it. That's the next stress for me. I've also, obviously my business has been hugely compromised through it, and that's another pressure. And discrediting campaigns. I've got musicians that are leading a hysterical attack against me, saying that I never paid them for gigs, which is an absolute lie. We're talking over a career of 30 years as well, by the way. This is not just last 2 years or anything like that. This is over across a period of 30 years. And anyone that's ever worked in the music industry knows it's a crap industry at times to be a part of. The amount of people that haven't paid me for gigs, and I'm left having to carry the bill and try and pay musicians is just part of the scenery that goes with such a sector, But other than that, we've got Labour Party trolls that troll us. We've got the minor parties still having a go at us, even though they've realised now that really they're inconsequential. I mean, the biggest thing that we've got to do now is figure out how these minor parties can come into the Advanced New Zealand Alliance, like 5 parties have so far, including New Zealand Public Party, and figure out a way to work together to prevent what this government is wanting to do to us, and not only that, to stop National getting in to do exactly the same thing. Judith Collins came out yesterday saying that she absolutely trusts the Prime Minister in her decision making and the integrity of it, based on what the Prime Minister's information was that she had to go on. Well, sorry, Judith, that makes you complicit. That shows that you can't be trusted to run our country either. So really, the two choices that people have this coming election is Advanced New Zealand or treason and tyranny. That's really it. So living in this sector that I found myself in for the last couple of months, it's a lot uglier than I thought it was, Vinny. I thought that something as pure as wanting to save our futures for our children, save our rights and freedoms, I thought that anyone would want to get in behind that and just support it and put pathetic things aside, and we all just get on with it. But it's not like that. So those are probably the things that stress me out the most. But mostly it's around dealing with the hurts and concerns of people that I see every day till the last time I close my eyes at night.
You know, one time my parents dropped me off at a fish and chip shop to get the fish and chips for the family, and then they left me there, right? And they came back late, and it was a really windy night, and I'd actually already started to walk home, and the wind ripped open the chip packet. And when my family actually eventually did come along and pick me up while I was walking on the side of the road, they accused me of opening it and trying to eat the chips. And that was something that really smacked of betrayal to me, right? And it was really unfair. And I thought to myself, you know what? There are two things that I really don't like in life: being accused of doing things that I haven't done, and not being given credit for the things that I have actually done. Right, and that seems to be something that's happening to you at the moment here, is that people aren't giving you your due credit, and they're accusing you of things that aren't as bad as they say they are. And I've seen these broad coalitions come out against you, and this musicians thing has come at me from a number of different angles, even through a musician my mum worked with has come through with this story. And so I'd like you to explain that. You did sort of go through and talk about the industry that it is, and I've got gigs that I didn't get paid for when I was filming dance parties and things of that nature. Sometimes in this industry, crap happens, and there's nothing you can really do about it. And I could be, you know, angry with the guy who didn't pay me or something like that, but I just go, okay, next job.
Oh yeah, look, you know, my family's been involved in music for, collectively, between my dad, myself and my brother, over 100 years. My dad's been, you know, we first got into this, he got into it in the mid-60s, for goodness sake, you know, and we've seen the ups and the downs of the music industry, and really you honestly, you have to make your mind up whether you're gonna deal with it and handle it or not, really. And I think that's why a lot of musicians are such robust creatures, because we do get into a position where we make our minds up: can we tolerate this sector that's highly irregular? You know, a lot of cash money gets paid, of course, and how do you handle that when someone doesn't pay you? And so it's a really trying system and sector, really. And so what I want to do is, when we get into government, one of the things I want to do is I want to absolutely have a look at Creative New Zealand and the way that it's set up, because I think it's a real lefty run arts sector that spends money in all the wrong places. Yes, it's good to do obscure and vague things, but there are plenty of examples where you have a country like Ireland that actually heavily invested in its music sector, so that musicians could take the music to the world and create businesses out of it. You know, whereas over here, it's like the weirder that you are and the more abstracted you are, the more funding you get. So, you know, the amount of times I put up funding proposals and just gave up in the end because, you know, I either wasn't Māori enough if I applied for the Māori grants, because I didn't wear a pew and play my guitar, or I didn't fit the flavour of the month, you know, in the general funding scheme. So my thing is that I want to work with musicians and create a better system where musicians can get well supported. And the other thing is I want to get musicians that have to compromise themselves and go on the dole to help feed their families. I want to get them well supported and have an artist's benefit, rather than people having to be on unemployment benefits and feel like they're being dishonest because they earn a little bit of money under the table and things like that. So I really, really want to sort that out for our whānau in the music sector, and those things don't get talked about. They don't get dealt with adequately, and so that's what I want to do, so that our people within the music sector have a chance of actually economically developing themselves. That's the blooming best thing that we could do, and I want to definitely confirm what our policy around the music and arts will be in the next couple of weeks once we get through the big ones.
So exactly who has been complaining about you, and what have they been saying exactly?
Just some people have said that I guess that I've I think some was that as basically as I didn't pay them for gigs, which is untrue. If I've always paid musicians, it's not one time over 30 years that I can remember not ever paying a musician that needed to get paid. Some musicians that I took with me to events in Samoa and Fiji and the Cook Islands, the deal was with them because they were brand new festivals, you know, they really were, and we're trying to launch something so that we could eventually turn them into really good commercial businesses so that everyone could get paid and have a great time. So what we did is we did a deal with musicians. Hey, look, do you want a weekend away in Fiji or a weekend away in Samoa? And we'll cover your flights, we'll cover your accommodation, we'll cover your costs on the ground as much as we can. But it's really just a great chance to go away, do two or three sets a day, have fun, have camaraderie with all the musicians, and be in another country and make contacts and networks and network in that as well. But now it's turned out to be, well, we weren't happy with that. He should have paid us. You know, these claims like that, these claims that I left bills at an event that we did in Samoa last year, and I left 2 bills, and both were friends. One with family of mine that own a resort there, which is accommodation for musicians that they said, don't worry, just pay that off. And the other one was $400 to a friend of mine, which is about $200 in our money, for the hire of a guitar amp, which I would have paid to him in person if it wasn't for COVID-19, because we work in Samoa all the time as part of my business. So those are the only 2 things there. But you know, some of these people, you know, they just think they've got a chance to try and stick it in me because I'm doing this thing, and I really don't care, Vinny. I really don't care a toss about any of that, because what we're doing here, you know, is freaking way so more important than any of that rubbish. That bring it on. You know, if you want to chuck axes at me, go for it. Just absolutely go for it. You know, but I don't really care, because I know what's aimed at us, and these same musicians that are having a go now are going to look very silly when they get a knock at their door and get a needle forced in their arm. If they don't comply, they get taken to a detention centre. That's what we're fighting against. And also, it's all good that Jacinda's giving out these grants at the moment. That's going to run out, and pretty soon the ferryman has to be paid, and our economy's going to crash when they work out that we can't pay the blooming thing. So what's going to happen is there will be no gigs, there will be no events, and everybody will be locked down in a socialist government. That's what we're fighting against.
Doesn't sound ideal, and this is the thing that needs to be reiterated again and again and again. There is no alternative. Okay, nobody's got the skill, the following, the policy, the regimented, you know, what would you call it? Statesmanship, Billy. That's what you've got. You've got this air of statesmanship. You know, it just wafts off you like some kind of an aura, and people are taken with it, you know, to a large degree. And this movement is becoming, I fear, a little bit cult-like. But you seem to have restrained it quite a significant degree by your pleas for calm during these terrible times. And I think it's something that's unique to you amongst politicians, is that when somebody asks you to talk about accusations, you actually explain them and you go back in the story and you put them into context for people. And that's not something you get when you interview a politician. Even Jamie, and this is another thing I'm of 2 minds about Jamie, is that he's so damn good at not answering a question. Like, he's really good at it, bro. Especially right now when there's so many things that are under investigation and what have you, where it's sub judice to say. And so he's got some good skills there. But at the one time, I'm kind of like, how open do we need to be? How cagey do we need to be? And we're just doing this in sort of like, I don't know, this is unexplored territory, I think, for a lot of us, because this phenomenon has never happened before. We've never been in this dimension of a crisis before.
Well, I think number one is that, you know, like I've said from day one, people are allowed to have mistakes in their backgrounds. Don't turn them into skeletons. That's the issue. And they become skeletons when you try and lie about them, when you try and be dishonest about them, when you try and sanitize your life. You know, no human has a sanitized life. In my view, as a Christian, there was only one that had a sanitized life. That was Jesus. And none of us can claim to have had a sanitized life. And anyone who claims that has either lived under under a rock all of their lives in a cloister, or just a liar. And for me, politicians. Well, number one, I still don't consider myself a politician. I consider myself a freedom fighter. I actually, I choke on it when people call me that. I'm practical, and as far as I'm concerned, is we need to get into government to protect our people, all the people in Aotearoa, New Zealand. And if we don't do that, we're going to lose our country and our freedoms, and that's all there is to it. And if I need to go into Parliament to do that, I'm prepared to do that. I don't even like the beehive, Vinny. And but for me, being transparent and explaining yourself if someone's got an accusation to make should be what every politician does. They shouldn't try and evade any accusations. If there's something there, if someone's made a mistake, be the first to admit it. That's one thing I learned in the army that they drum into here, is that if you've stuffed up, made a mistake, be the first to front up about it. And that's how I was actually raised, but that was underlined when I was in the army, and I'd be the first to do that, even more so as a Christian. If someone really had an issue and they came and saw me about it, and if it was true, I'd be the first one to drop on my knees and ask for forgiveness and rectify it, because I am human. If there's things I've forgotten, then so be it. And if I hurt someone, I'd be the first to ask for forgiveness and remedy the situation. There's no flies on me that way. I'd be the first to do it. And what's amazing is how many people that I've even had nothing to do with are claiming things about me, and then others that have never ever come to say to me, hey mate, look, is there a reason why such and such happened and all that? No one. And next minute, of course, because one or two of these people who I fired because of their conduct and their behaviour are having a go at me because they see a great opportunity to do that, because I'm a co-leader of a big massive movement like that. But the thing is, people aren't dumb. People aren't dumb out there. We know that. I mean, I'd recognise it for what it is. People are having a go because they see suddenly my public profile has gone through the roof. Good luck. Go for it. We know what they're doing. I had friends of mine from Samoa ring me the other day, say that people had got in touch with a journalist who was ringing over there to see if I'd left any bills behind and all that. So this is how how insidious these people are. I mean, I've even got a guy in Christchurch, a really average guitar player, who I wanted to take overseas with me, who I couldn't get onto a plane because the plane couldn't take him, who I ended up paying for not coming, is having a go at me. I don't even know what he's saying anymore. But really, when you talk about politicians evading any sort of accusations, they shouldn't. They should front them head on, and if there's a right explanation around it, then put it forward and let people make up their minds after that. That's honesty.
It's a tough thing as well when we're talking about this, because you're going into a position where you're sort of being seen as a messianic figure, all right? Billy will save us, sort of thing. And it's like, no, folks, each and every one of us has to contribute towards the greater whole. No more than a captain of the ship is the ship. He's simply the captain. The crew is what makes the ship work.
Oh, absolutely. There's no way that any one person can affect this and get things done the way they need to be done to protect ourselves here. We need every last person out there right now to absolutely categorically wake up to what's happening in New Zealand, wake up to what's happening in the rest of the world, because what's happening here is happening in Europe, it's happening in places in the United States, it's happening in Asia. Like yesterday, for example, someone sent me a link to a fantastic protest in Ireland, and which was the keynote speaker there was Jim Core, and he spoke so fantastically well and summed up exactly what we're going through in New Zealand, in fact, what they're going through in Ireland, and it's the same things that I'm saying. And he had, cheapers, there looked like 10,000 people or more out the front of the steps of the Parliament, and I believe it was in Dublin, and that's what we need to do here. And in fact, I'll announce here that I announced on my live broadcast this morning that Advanced Advance New Zealand, we are going to organise a mass protest in Auckland, and we want it to be the biggest thing ever done to send a clear message to this government. We will not take needles in our arms that we don't want. We will not suffer these lockdowns that are destroying freedoms and economy. We will not serve the United Nations programs Agenda 21 and 2030, and we will repair our economy, and we will repair sovereignty for the individual and sovereignty for Aotearoa New Zealand. We will do those things, and we're not going to take this nonsense from Labour or National laying down. We are a free people in our country. We're a good people, New Zealanders and Māori. As tangata whenua, we've got a proud history that our soldiers and servicemen and women have died to protect, and we're going to honour that by having a protest that's going to make that message very, very clear to the government. They're out.
Now, we've also been having other sort of marches and things like that organised. Somebody was talking about Auckland's Liberty March this Saturday, August 29th at midday. Somebody texted me and asked me to plug that on the show and ask you to endorse them and that kind of thing. But the problem is I don't know nothing about them. I mean, I'm not sure if you do. But at the end of the day, we're all in the same boat here, the same waka. So let's help each other out.
Absolutely. I spoke to one of the supporters of that today that rang me actually, and working with the organisers, and absolutely, my thought is, we need to support these types of regular protests, because they might be smaller than what we're talking about here with Advance New Zealand and what we want to do, but they're very important because they send a consistent signal to the government that New Zealanders aren't happy. We're waking up in droves, and this is a massive movement that cannot be ignored, cannot be denied, and the complicit mainstream media can say whatever they like, but it doesn't change the fact that New Zealanders want accountability and transparency out of this government. It hasn't been happening, and we're going to demand it. Nay, we're going to get it.
How do you feel personally about our chances here? Because I was looking at it, somebody asked me, what's the chance of us actually rolling back this New World Order? And I was like, well, it's kind of like the story of the tortoise and the hare, We were the hare. We were sitting under the tree relaxing for so long because we thought that there's no way the tortoise, who was moving very, very slowly towards the finish line, could beat us. But now we're awake, and now we're running towards that finish line. The tortoise is almost there, almost got their New World Order in place. But I think there's a possibility that we'll be able to just get in there by the edge of our teeth.
Exactly. The world is watching us, Vinny. I get messages from people all over the world. I'm having Zoom meetings with people from all around the world, freedom fighters, and everybody is watching New Zealand closely because they know that if we get conquered here, it's the big test for everywhere else on the planet. Where they also know if we defeat it here, it'll provide the prescription to how they can defeat it overseas. So we are the testing bed for either a win or a massive loss of epic proportions here. So what we need to do is wake up to this. We need to stop hammering each other for the silliest things in the world, like I'm talking about between the minor parties. I mean, for Pete's sake, I had a guy ring me, a leader from another party the other day, who rang me up to say, oh, look, is there a chance we can not stand a candidate in a certain seat because their party co-leader is standing in there? And I said, look, that's great, of course we would, but come inside the Advance New Zealand Alliance, give it, let's vote party vote Advance New Zealand, and we'll support your candidates wherever you have them, and all that. And the silly response was, oh, we don't like Jamie Lee Ross. Well, golly jeepers, So I said to this guy, for the sake of one person, you're willing to put at risk, our future as a country, as a free country. And he had no answer to that. I just, this, and then I had, we saw someone online last night say that social credit is the way to go and the way forward. Well, give me a break. They had 806 votes during their last election. They've been going for 73 years. 806 votes at the last election. They're doing all the same things, tracking exactly the same way, and and yet they won't even consider coming into working with Advance New Zealand. Why? Because of me. They think I'm a creep. So that's it's just unbelievable. unbelievable, that this type of behaviour and mentality exists out there, and I don't get it. But, what's happening is, regardless of what people say, we're growing on a weekly basis. Our reach, we did 1 million people in our reach in 1 week last week, Vinny. 1 million people were reached. 900,000 people saw my videos and viewed them in 1 week, and it's going to be the same again this week by the time we finish on Sunday. And what's happening is there are a lot of people that are too afraid to come out of the closet and say they're Advanced New Zealand NZPP supporters because they feel like they're going to get spat on. But they're there. They are there, and I hear from them. I hear from people saying they're too afraid to say and openly support us, but they're there and they'll be voting up Advanced New Zealand on the day. So that's the message that we're continually saying.
I'm reminded of a small documentary about Ron Paul where he was number 1 in polls, but they would only show the number 2 to 5 candidates in the poll results on the mainstream media, where he was number 1 in voter support, but they don't actually let him speak at the debates. And I recall one debate he was at where the audience was asked, by a round of applause, which candidate do you support? They go to this candidate, a little bit of support, and that one, a little bit of support. And then they went around to Ron Paul, and all of a sudden, most of the crowd is just up in their arms and going absolutely crazy in support of him. And nobody even knew that there was that much support there because they were all too afraid to say the truth. What if that is the case that is going on right now? What if there is actually a chance of us getting that magical 51% number? Can we start pushing for that? Can we just say, look, disappointment or not, let's try to get 51%, because that's ultimately what we need at the end of the day. And if that is the goal, I think that there's a chance that future will manifest.
Oh, absolutely. You know what? We used to think in terms of how can we get over 5%. But I prayed deeply before starting this journey. I really did, and I said to the Lord, if you want this to happen, you want me to do this, it's your movement. I'll do what you tell me to do or lead me to do, and make it bigger than being heard. So I've never ever looked at us as going to be a minor party, quote unquote. I always figured that we would quickly become the 3rd largest party in New Zealand, which we are absolutely, if not they're already very close to being. I've always figured that we would do more than 5% of the vote, and rather than just edging over. It's never been a goal of ours. But I've seen the Outdoors Party claim they're going to get 51%, and this is a party that when they broadcast something, including a slanderous piece on me, they get 8 views or 16 views, 2 days later. And so we need to be realistic. We need to be pragmatic. We need to absolutely mark and measure each day that we've got till the election, and we need to be aiming for that. I mean, absolutely. Wouldn't it be just fantastic that we could get that percentage? But it does require, a mass amount of marketing to get people to realise what it is that we're dealing with here. I think the Cinderella effect is starting to wear off on people, especially those New Zealanders that are going to lose their jobs, that are being forced tested now. The amount of families that I know that have been through detention, COVID-19 detention, once they come through the borders, they are hating on this government in epic ways. And if people woke up to what they've been through, people would see that there's something very, 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 very off and very, very wrong with this government. And potential is, if National get in unopposed as well, these parties, left or right, blue or red, are going to end up doing the same thing to us.
That's right. The greens, the black and white, the yellows, the blues, the reds. It's all red, basically, as far as I'm concerned. There is communism, incompetence, and Advanced New Zealand Public Party, right? Those are the 3 election choices, essentially. One stands for freedom, one stands for not getting anything done, and one stands for destroying everything we hold dear, right? And these are all huge, big clusters of groups. You've got a huge cluster of communist parties that are infiltrated, that are trying to destroy this country for their own benefit, and then they're not going to benefit from it at all, because whenever a communist party takes over a country, the people who actually help them get in there are amongst the first to go missing, because they're the ones who know how to change countries. They're the ones who are so hopeful about the new utopia that's going to be brought about by their socialist paradise, and therefore they are the ones who need to be eliminated first, because they will be so upset when they realise what they have done that they will fight tooth and nail to undo their mistake. But by then it will be too late, because your terrible totalitarian government that you helped to get in there will have you taken out. All right, so that's basically it, ladies and gentlemen. You can either help the communists get in and then get taken out. You can help the incompetents, and I don't want to call them incompetent as in like they don't know what they're talking about or they don't know what they're doing or whatever. I'm just saying that they're not competent enough to get the whole job done. Well, this is a huge job, a massive political party. How many people that you need on the back end? How many crew that you need doing all of these little intimate jobs that you, the leader, cannot do in and of yourself, right? They don't have the teams, they don't have the reach, they don't have the competency to get the teams and the reach. That is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the incompetence factor. So again, you have death by attrition, or actual chance at hope, right? It's so freaking simple, and I wish people would just get rid of their trust issues and their mental illness, get on the bandwagon for once, right? You know, get on the big team for the big win, and maybe then we can do something, because I've been covering this political sphere in this country in activism circles for a dozen years. I have never seen any movement on any issue, right? Never. Until now. That's what's really sad about it, because all of these great activists that that have mentored me, that I've interviewed on the show, they haven't accomplished 1/10% of what the New Zealand Public Party tends to accomplish in a day. And so, basically, here's the platform, folks. You can share it. If you don't have the team, we've got the team. If you don't got the crew, we've got the crew. If you don't got the reach, we've got the reach. Join us. Then we can win. Because it was like on Braveheart they were saying, I'm so sorry I'm rambling on here, Billy, but tired, that if we join, we can win. And if we win, well, then we'll have something that none of us have ever had before. A country of our own.
Exactly. You know, someone just made a really good point just then, and that is that the Fijian community in New Zealand, they know what it's like to live in an oppressive regime. I worked in Fiji for 5 years between 2010 and 2014, just under 5 years, and you know, understanding how that government worked, and before it became a inverted commas, quote unquote, democratic. You know, if they didn't like you, they just turned up with a truck of soldiers and police. They'll take you out of your home, take you down the road and give you a good old hiding and drop you back off. You know, at least they drop you back off. I mean, I've got friends over there, musicians that I work with there. One of the ladies, a very famous singer, she was tortured for 2 days because she publicly spoke out against Frank Bainimarama. And, you know, and then what happens is, you know, people learn to live with that type of situation, hating it, but never being able to see themselves out of it until international pressure forced them to go into quote unquote democratic elections. And the Fijian community, they know what it's like. The Chinese community here, they know what it's like to live in a communist society. You know, we've got former East Germans living here, Czechoslovakians that have lived in the Soviet period, and they know exactly what it smells like. And every one of them that I've ever had a conversation from those areas, they are absolutely deeply concerned about because they know exactly what it looks like. You know, socialism and totalitarianism by fractionalism. You know, it's real, it's true. You know, people keep on trying to say, hey, you know, it's all conspiratorial, but just look, people don't look in history enough. And I've got a great big library full of encyclopedias encyclopedias and history books that I read, that go right back to antiquity, that I read to school myself up as to what's happened in humanity through governments and through, kingdoms and different systems and that. And it's absolutely clear as a bell to me that, especially in the 20th century, the formula that they use to bring in totalitarianism, whether it be through communism or fascism, it's done through fractionalism, and pretty soon, hey presto, bang, it's that frog in the pot wakes up to a skinful and often knows that he's in a pot of boiling water. But by then, as you say, but it's too blinking late. And what our job is at Advanced New Zealand is to calmly put together the plan to how we can defeat this. But not only that, you also need good plans to take our economy going forward. You need to have good plans to take our country forward so that we're not destroyed by the economic hangover that this COVID-19 crisis mismanagement is going to cause us all. And when you talk about activism, I was talking about it yesterday with a brother that's had a lot to do with the 1080 movement, and these people that are in some of these minor parties that have been so good at 1080 activism but have never been successful in preventing anything. There's still millions of droplets of 1080 being dumped on our soil and into our water table. And so the secret is here, folks, is that to change things, we're going to have to do it from within. I mean, we had Winston Peters in the last election. He promised the 1080 movement that he would get rid of 1080. But you know what he did? He gave 20-something million to shut up and go away, and he didn't close 1080 down. So Winston Peters can't be trusted. The Greens, they can't be trusted. All they are now, the Greens, they are just an environmental so-called extension of the Labour Party. They believe the same things. They want the same things. They used to have Agenda 21 on their website until someone pointed it out to them that it was evil. Then they rewrote it and put it back and named it something else. The Greens, the way they are today, you can be sure, pun intended, they are not the Green Party of old that I used to have great respect for back in the day. They are completely different, and the way that they displayed that indifference to freedom is when they started to implement Agenda 21 principles, which they've been doing all the way.
They have too, and what's interesting is that they're not the only party to have Agenda 21 principles in their policy. In fact, it's in the wording, if you were to look at the environmental policy of the Mana Party, National, Labour, the Greens, New Zealand First, all of their environmental policy is lifted directly out of Agenda 21. And that's only because I specifically looked and knew the wording of it, okay? You would probably I would venture a guess that the vast majority of legislation that has been proposed or passed by either local or central government since 1992 in this country has been lifted directly out of Agenda 21. They have been ruling us all this time, and only now, 30 years odd later, have we actually got a party who's calling it like it is. That's brilliant. I was like, this is the most cynical SOB journalist in this country, sitting around mulling over stuff to myself, ruminating. Well, we're never going to defeat the New World Order. Everybody's like too serious, right? They take themselves far too seriously. They can't see the forest through the trees, and I believe that the job of a wayseer is not to be able to see in the dark when everything's all confusing. It's simply being able to see that there is a light in the distance and to help move us toward it, to help direct us toward it. And Billy, you are that light in my life at the moment anyway.
Look, I was saying this to someone yesterday. Someone asked me, would I step aside to let someone else come in so that all the parties would come together? And I went, in a heartbeat. In a heartbeat. I'd do that in a heartbeat. If it could be done, if that would be the answer to this, I'd do it in an absolute heartbeat. And I think that's a bit of a quagmire in itself in saying it like that. But if someone had a better idea on how to do these things and could lead a better checkers, I'd do it in a heartbeat. Vinny, there's no as I continuously say, and I absolutely mean it to the core of my soul, I'm a servant to this cause. On the face of it out front, yes, I provide firm leadership to the team. I'm a co-leader in it with Jamie Lee, of course. But man, I'd be the first to hand over the keys to someone else that could do it better or had a better mandate, or if the other parties would come in to the Advance New Zealand umbrella. If it meant me not being here, I'd do it in a heartbeat. I tell you that, and I think that's the difference. If people aren't prepared to fall on their sword to get things done to protect our country, then that just exposes them. But I'd do that in a heartbeat. In fact, this good friend of mine that rang me up yesterday said to me, "Hey, look, if we put a proposal up to the other parties saying that you'd shift over and all that, would that work for you?" I said, absolutely, in a heartbeat. But the problem is, of course, after we explored that for half a day, they won't work with Jamie Lee. This is how pathetic they are. It's just, and not being one in intent. And it really virtually astounds me. These within these big parties like National Labour. Now I've got a couple of mates and that are MPs and National, and I ring them up and I say, "What the hell are you guys doing? I mean, really? What are you guys doing to our country?" And they're like they're cogs in a big wheel that is rolls forward in a way that's going to kill us in New Zealand, and the same as Labour, but it just does it at a different pace, and they're stuck in it and they're not able to do anything about it. Now, for us in Advance New Zealand, as you continuously say, Vinny, this whole movement, New Zealand Public Party, which kicked it off, is absolutely designed for that one purpose, and that is to have a government that's going to serve the people, protect us from the globalist program, and that's really what we're talking about. People call it New World Order, we call it the globalist program, whatever you want to call it. We need to, we are an island nation, for Pete's sake. We are miles away from people. Our closest neighbours are the Pacific Islands with our whānau in Whanganui-a-Kiwa, the South Pacific. We have Australia, 3 hours away from us. We are isolated down here. There is no reason why we can't defend ourselves as an independent, sovereign country. And in fact, from what I've been studying in this past week, all of the evidence is absolutely there that New Zealand can be a sovereign country. We can be a sovereign people, and we can stand on sovereign legs. We do not need to be at a vassal state of the new world order of the United Nations. We don't have to be a vassal state of any program if we don't want to be. But what's happened is the government and other governments before it have made it look like that it's a fait accompli, that we can't stop, but we can. It's going to take us all together to come together, to bind together and say, no, we are not going to do this. And that's why, it's not just because I'm a former soldier saying this, but that's why our men and women went to war, so that we weren't victims to empires, that we weren't victims to globalist agendas, either by way of the Nazis or the Japanese or anything like that. That's why they did it. And we need to wake up to those defensive principles again and apply them. Because if we don't, then it's a very, very, very rough road for all of us, and especially myself and Jamie Lee. Because I tell you what, they'll be knocking on our door.
Well, let's talk about Jamie Lee then for a minute. Can you describe the circumstances upon which the alliance was actually formed? Because I was a little bit taken aback by Jamie Lee's words and his condemnation of communism, because I just didn't know that much about him. Back in the day, the only thing that I saw was just another National Party cult member, and it felt disgusting to me. And then he comes out against the communists, and I'm just like, yeah, boy. But again, that past, when you're part of the cult, as Jamie says, the cult of the National Party, you do things, you say things, you act in ways that aren't ordinary, that aren't necessarily yourself. I mean, how have you reconciled this?
Well, I'll tell you what. So starting back from day one, we launched the party on a Thursday night in June. This is the New Zealand Public Party. I think it was the 9th or the 11th of June. It just seems like years ago now. I met Jamie Lee the very next morning for coffee after the launch, and I met Jamie Lee. We had a talk, and for me, he seemed like a politician. And as you know, I don't really like politicians at all because they all the reasons that we talk about. And then I thought, yep, nice guy, nice enough fella, but just another politician. We had about a half an hour coffee. Someone else came and joined me, so I had to move on from that. I then start talking to all the other minor parties about, unifying and come together. That wasn't working out well. They all thought I was an arrogant misogynist, bent and twisted on domination. And at the end of that first month, then what happened was we did an event down in Coromandel Town, and it was a very tiny room packed to the gills, and sat about 50 people, had about 80 top of scene. It was a Tuesday or Wednesday night, and I didn't know this, but Jamie Lee had driven down from Auckland and snuck in to watch my presentation. It turned out he was staying at the same motel, so we got back to our motel. I didn't even know he was there, and I saw the Jamie Lee political mobile parked up because he's got his name on it, and I got my party secretary to go and knock on his door and say, hey, what are you doing here? And then he came over and this is about 11:30 at night, and he came over and we sat around and had a cup of tea, and we talked for about 2 hours about everything. And then it really came out what his appreciation was for what we were saying, what we're standing on. It certainly looked like a bit of a meal ticket maybe for him at the time, but I persevered. I spoke with him, spoke about 1 a.m, and then I thought, there's something here with this guy. And then we got back together in Auckland and we had another chat, and basically, he said, look, I think we could work together. I think there's a pathway forward here. I think that we could be really effective in working together. He's a sitting MP. He's got a registration coming through. We've got a movement. Hey, why don't we work together? And so the very first thing that we had to clear up though is where we stood on policy issues. I mean, I'm pro-life. I'm against the euthanasia bill as well. He voted for both of those things. So we had to look at a fair and equitable way that we could work together to deal with these things so that we could satisfactorily remain with our integrity, which we've done. And we've got a very, very, very good plan to how to deal with some of these things, ranging from gun law as well, firearms licenses and firearms laws. I want to repeal the current law. I want to work with firearms owners to bring back sensible classifications and firearms licensing arrangements so that people can have the types of weapons, firearms that they want to own without being persecuted, and that they could do so legally. Because I believe that the problem is not with licensed firearms owners, it's with the criminals that have them. That's the problem, and people that aren't qualified to use them. So we talked about those sorts of things, and we came to that point where I thought, yep, I can advance this, no pun intended, and we can get our way with these policies and let the people decide and go for it. So, we agreed on that. We signed off on our merger agreement, and then, to where we are today now, another 4 parties are signed on as composite parties of Advance New Zealand. And I've got to say, in the month that I've gotten to know Jamie Lee, he's a very smart man. He's someone I do respect. My respect level has increased dramatically. He always says to me, just remember, Billy, I'm not a Christian, and I always say, not yet. And we always have a bit of a giggle about that. And because my story is, if a mongrel like me can be saved and changed, anyone can be saved and changed. So that's the joke that we have between us. But anyway, he's been on a journey for the last month with us, and the things that he's learnt and taken on board as a human has been really, really awesome to see. And it's a privilege to work with him. And also, the advantages of having a sitting MP in this movement are as follows. Number one, we get electoral commission information that none of the minor parties get. Number two, we get access to the electoral roll information as well, which none of the other minor parties can get. Number three, you're about 30% more likely to go back into Parliament with a sitting MP, that none of the other parties have got that. Number four, we've got someone who understands the parliamentary process very, very well and how things work. None of the other parties have that. I could go on and on as to the benefits that he brings to the table, and so it's been it really has. It's been a privilege to work with his experience. He's still a young man and got lots to offer, and that's how the merger and that's how this relationship works. Every morning, Vinny, at 9 o'clock, we have an executive Zoom meeting. So that means we get together with a bunch of us. We have our online meetings. At night, we have our candidates meetings, and we have a policy team that everyone gets together every second night, and we talk about our policies. At the moment, it's every night until we finalise our democracy policy, which we're going to get out this week. And that's how you get movement. That's how you get efficiency. And boy, it's fantastic to be a part of it.
That's it's good and reassuring to hear. I want to be on those executive meetings at 9 o'clock in the mornings, by the way. so much stuff I want to contribute. And I was just thinking about, the new gun licensing laws and stuff like that. And I've got a bunch of factoids here about Christchurch. I'm not sure if I've read out on air before, but I'm not sure if I've actually read them to you. So if you've got a minute, I just want to run through these and give people a little bit of a background on Christchurch itself. Brenton Tarrant, an Australian citizen, not a New Zealander, claims he got money from BitConnect which he used to travel, although there is no evidence to substantiate this claim except his word. The Guardian quoted that the ABC claimed Brenton earned the money from BitConnect, except there's no mention of BitConnect in the article that they linked. With this alleged money from unconfirmed sources, Tarrant travelled to multiple areas around the world, but his first stop was Israel, where he stayed only 9 days out of a 3-month visa. Israeli officials gave no further details. The Australian Embassy and New Zealand Consulate did not respond to requests for comment either. After Tarrant came to New Zealand, he claims to have spent 2 years planning the attack and was scoping out the mosques in Christchurch for 3 months before the shooting. He obtained his gun licence in 2017 after a police visit where Tarrant gave the names of 2 New Zealand residents whom are alleged to have never met Tarrant but instead met him in sites such as 4chan and 8chan, but that allegation cannot be confirmed as police refused to comment. Immediately buying firearms, Tarrant's behaviour and rants was noted by a fellow gun club member who reported him to police, and nothing was done about it. Just before the attacks in 2019, the Crisis X terrorism conference was kicking off, bringing in the best crisis management delegates from around the world, including a, quote, highly realistic simulation. Immediately preceding the attack, Facebook went down for 48 hours worldwide, and the first day it came back, the Facebook live stream of Brenton Tarrant shooting was the news of the day. There were drills on the day with the New Zealand Police Armed Defenders Squad, and the Prime Minister herself was quoted as saying someone in Armed Defenders Squad had entered the mosque and opened fire. A sniper drill was also happening on the day with foreign troops on New Zealand soil who were even given shoot-to-kill orders. The manifesto that Tarrant published, where he claimed that he wanted the world to follow the Chinese communist model, was outlawed in New Zealand and became illegal to view, pending 10 years in jail. The video itself of the shooting was also made illegal to view or share, which goes against the New Zealand Human Rights Act to share any information in any form. People who shared the video were visited by armed police, and in one case the police pointing guns at their children's heads. Journalists reporting on the story, that's myself, were visited by police 5 times in 1 week following the massacre. The internet freedom that we used to have was immediately censored as algorithms were already set up and ready to go. As on day 1 after the shooting, I was censored in the middle of a live stream. After 10 years of work, that had never happened to me. My guest at the time was Ollie Damagard, a worldwide expert in false flags. He'd been doing this 25 years, and he'd never been censored in the middle of a live stream either. There were restrictions on what words you could use. You couldn't use the word false flag in your video titled, otherwise they'll get deleted. I think I had about maybe 5 videos deleted. Conspiracy theories started emerging online overseas, alleging fake guns or that there was digital fakery or no deaths, and these have since been disproven by Max Egan's work, where he went through frame by frame and determined all of these allegations were in fact fraudulent. The government then decided that it was going to mount a secret inquiry into the incident and keep all the information away from the public. The gunman himself pled not guilty, flashed a 666 Masonic hand sign to the papers, and then a gun ban was introduced and implemented 14 days after the shooting. Then, in March 2020, on day 1 of the COVID-19 lockdowns in New Zealand, Brenton Tarrant's lawyers and himself pled guilty when there weren't any media allowed to actually come to the hearings. And then the government accepted the guilty verdict, calls off any and all investigations into the Christchurch mosque massacre, no royal commission, no inquiries, case closed, and Tarrant is now in permanent solo isolation at the cost of $40,000 a month to the New Zealand taxpayer. Nothing to see here, folks. That's it.
Well, what can you say to that?
Yeah, you're a bit shocked, eh?
Well, when you line it up like that, it just, if it was me, I would have an independent People's Commission going through all of those points, and that's one of the other points that is going to be something that we're going to work on a framework around that, because I really believe there needs to be probably about 4 different People's Commissions, investigative commissions set up. These 4 commissions are set up to investigate different areas of government and the decisions that have been made. They need to have trustworthy former judges and police and investigators in them. They need to be, it's kind of almost like the SFO. I'd like to see the SFO actually investigated as well and how they've done things. And I'd like to set up these People's Commissions that'll be have the jurisdictional authority and resources to be able to, on behalf of the people, investigate and research some of the very big things that have affected us greatly in our country and get to the bottom of them. And when I say that to people, you can see the flicker of hope in the eyes, because that's what's needed. We need some independent People's Commissions to go back through the history of the governments, find out who's who in the zoo and who's done what, who signed us up to what, and why, and if treason can be proven in those things, that those people get charged and prosecuted and tried. And if they're free, great. If they're innocent, no problem. But we need People's Commissions to investigate these things, and that's desperately required in so many different areas that we know of. But if we could distill that down to 4 different types of commissions, operating pretty similar to how NBIE does, but only better. Where you have, an NBIE, for example, has different areas of threads that take up a different part of the sector that they look after. I think a People's Commission needs to be set up to do the same thing, to investigate many of these things that concern us. COVID-19 crisis. Why, how, who, what needs to be found out about that. How are decisions made around some of the investment decisions to sell land has been made. What has our Prime Minister been involved with overseas, promising to give away New Zealand land in large proportions to people that invest billions of dollars in our country without consulting back to us? Why has she stood on a Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation event platform and say that she's committing us beyond any other country in the world to use an example for Agenda 2130 successful implementation? So, these, and not just that, I want to investigate John Key. I want to investigate Helen Clark. I want to investigate all of them. I want to find out more about at least the last 6 governments. Find out who they were, and what have they been up to, and ask the questions. And I had some incredible information sent to me a few weeks ago that gave me a chronological breakdown of all the bad stuff that's happened in New Zealand since the days days of Norman Kirk, and it's like a nightmare. It's like a nightmare story of epic proportions, where you have people selling New Zealand out from under us, going into different types of trade commercial agreements where they were kind of like little mini TPPAs that we don't know anything about, and so we really do need to get into government to undo that, and also have a total look at our constitutional framework and set up so that we can unpack it, deconstruct it, and rebuild it so that it serves the people in a democratic way. Because the difference between democracy is the tool to implement freedoms and protect freedoms. That's what democracy is, and we need to all at once understand that our freedoms is what God gives us. We are all given that. That's up to us to.
I'd like to back up that. I'd like to back up that point as well. This is the reason why God appears in the Constitution of the United States, not for spiritual reasons, but for legal reasons. If God makes a law, what man can break it? You see, that's the whole legal framework behind that. But I'm sorry, Billy, go ahead.
No, not at all. No, you're right. So, just it's up to the individual now to start waking up that we can be sovereign individuals. There is a pathway for it. We can have our rights and protections as people that won't do harm to other people, and that there are facilitations that are documented, provable, legal, and established that we can work with to be able to implement a system that is fully democratic in its functionality. The freedoms thing we already got, but democracy is the tool that you use to functionalise so that governments don't overreach. Because what we're seeing here right now is a government that's far overreached beyond anything we've ever seen before. They have overreached beyond. Jacinda Ardern thinks she can flash her smile and people are going to swallow it. This government feels that they are beyond reproach. Well, I've got bad news for them, Vinny. Advance New Zealand says otherwise. Advance New Zealand says things that people don't want us to say in these positions, and that's why media marginalise us. They're out to get us. Well, good luck, because at the end of the day, people will make their minds up, and Advance New Zealand is pressing forward, and we're going to fight for all people. That's what we're going to do.
And furthermore, from the archives of Honouring Penny Bright, this is her action plan to prevent corruption, white-collar crime and corporate welfare in New Zealand. And it used to be a list of questions by, do we have these things in place? And the answer is no. But if we set up our anti-corruption domestic legislative framework in place so New Zealand can ratify the UN Convention Against Corruption. Have we ratified that yet? Against corruption? No, we haven't. Set up a New Zealand independent anti-corruption body tasked with educating the public and preventing corruption. Do we have one of those? No, we don't. Change the New Zealand laws to ensure genuine transparency in the funding of candidates for elected public office and political parties at central and local government level. 4. Legislate for an enforceable code of conduct for New Zealand members of Parliament. Just remember, there ain't no code of conduct at the moment because they make the rules for everyone else. 5. Make it an offence under the Local Government Act 2002 for New Zealand local government elected representatives to breach their code of conduct. Is it currently illegal for them to breach it? No, it isn't. 6. Make it a lawful requirement for a publicly available register of interests for New Zealand local government elected representatives. Are they required to disclose their conflicts of interest at the moment? No, they're not. 7. Make it a lawful requirement for publicly available register of interest for New Zealand central government staff responsible for property and procurement, including the Ministry of Health, in order to help prevent conflicts of interest. Is there any tracking of them right now? No, there isn't. 8. Make it a lawful requirement for a publicly available register of interest for New Zealand local government staff and directors and staff employed by council-controlled organisations, CCOs, responsible for property and procurement. Do they currently have any things of that register of interest for all of these people that control $1 billion worth of assets? No, they don't. 9. Make it... I'm sorry, this is going to take a bit of a while. There's 10 more. Are you interested in listening to these? Because I think they're rather important.
You know what? I'll tell you what, mate. I want you to send that to me, please. If you can email that to me, because Penny is completely onto something here, and she's actually put into writing there that exactly what I've been thinking. I've worked for a CCO, and the lack of accountability is just amazing. They paper shuffle to get around accountability and all that. So I'd be really, really keen to actually see all of that, mate. If you wouldn't mind emailing that to me, as well as a pathway to someone from Penny to State that I could talk to if we were going to use any of that, so that she can be acknowledged in the right way, so that plagiarism isn't accused. She's definitely onto stuff there. That's God bless her memory, and I would really love a copy of that if you can send that to me, mate. I've ran out of time. I've got to go to my next meeting, but it's always great to be here. Thanks for having me today. To all the people out there, each week our audience seems to grow bigger and bigger, Vinny. I've been watching the numbers.
Yeah, it has actually. It's been working very well, and maybe I'm just on the bandwagon partly because of I get to benefit somewhat from the huge audience that you've created in such a short period of time. And after 10 years working at this and getting a very tiny audience for my work, I'm still a little bit professionally jealous, frankly. But anyway, thank you very much for your time today, and you have yourself a wonderful go of it. And the link to that image has been sent to your Signal account.
Thanks very much, and look after that beautiful baby girl of yours.
Oh, that reminds me. Let's. We've got a new baby snoring one. We've got a baby snoring one now, where she just kind of sits there, just trying to sleep and snoring. It's pretty cute.
You have to, during summer, you guys have to come up to our place, and a couple of us that we'll take you down to the beach. That'll be lovely. Yeah, well, it's going to be good to get out of lockdown at some point, because I don't know, just sitting here. I mean, I never go out of the house and do anything anyway. But when the government tells me that I can't, somehow I really want to, and I feel very depressed when I can't. All right. Thank you very much. All right, mate. Thanks.
Cheers, mate. Catch you later. Sure. Billy TK, ladies and gentlemen, nzpp.org.nz is the website. Have a good day. All right, there he goes. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for listening to the Vinny Eastwood Show. Bear in mind that this is a listener-supported broadcast, has been for a dozen years. So if you do want to support me, go to thevinnyeastwoodshow.com or have a look at the links in the description and make a donation today. If you want to support Advance New Zealand in the public party, nzpp.org.nz is the website. And there are also links in the description if you want to subscribe to the YouTube channel, sign up to the Twitter, or sign up to become a member of the party. I think it costs you about $15 to sign up and stuff of that nature. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you again very much for supporting myself, supporting my family, and supporting Billy as well. I hope you've enjoyed the show, and thank you very much for joining us. Now, just before we go though, for those of you who didn't get to hear the last of it, I'm going to point out these last 10 little points from Penny Bright's dossier here, so that we don't leave this stone unturned. And you can go to Honouring Penny Bright on Facebook as well if you want to get more information on Penny, and also RIP Penny Bright is the playlist that I have on my channel if you want to read that. So number 10, make it a lawful requirement that a cost-benefit analysis of New Zealand central government and local government public finances be undertaken to improve that private procurement of public services previously provided in-house is cost-effective for the public majority. If not, then return public service provision to staff directly employed in-house and cut out these private contractors who are effectively dependent on corporate welfare. Is there currently any kind of way to protect that kind of stuff from happening? If they just do something, it's like 10 times more expensive than doing it in-house. Do they have a way of figuring that out and stopping that from happening? No, they don't. 11, legislate for a legally enforceable code of conduct for members of the New Zealand judiciary to ensure that they are not above the law. Do they currently have an enforceable code of conduct? No, they don't. 12. Ensure that all New Zealand court proceedings are recorded and audio records made available to parties who request them. Are they currently recorded? No, they're not. Can you get them if you request them? No, you can't. Ladies and gentlemen, this country's so corrupt. And Penny Bright, God rest her soul. God, I wish she was here with us now. The amount of advice that she could be giving to NZPP, it's all on the records of the Vinny Eastwood Show, over 100 episodes with her, folks. We need her now. Ensure that make it a lawful requirement for a publicly available, quote, New Zealand Register of Interest, New Zealand Judicial Register of Interest, to help prevent conflicts of interest. Do they currently wonder whether or not any judges have any conflicts of interest? Any framework for that? No, they don't. Make it a lawful requirement for a publicly available New Zealand Register of Lobbyists and Code of Conduct for Lobbyists at central government ministerial level. Do we currently have a list of lobbyists and a code of conduct for them that's enforcement? No, not at all. So we've got unlimited lobbyists with no playbook, no rules that they can violate, you see? You see how corrupt this country is, ladies and gentlemen. No wonder we haven't ratified the UN Convention Against Corruption, which, maybe is kind of a moot point at this point, isn't it? Make it a lawful requirement at New Zealand central and local government level for a, quote, post-separation employment quarantine period from the time officials leave public service to take up a similar role in the private sector, and helps stop the revolving door. Is there currently a quarantine period? No, John Key can just go from being Prime Minister to being the head of Air New Zealand tomorrow. That's kind of what happened. The potential for corruption in there is quite significant, really, when you think about it. The revolving door. Number 16, make it a lawful requirement that it is only a binding vote of the public majority that can determine whether public assets held at New Zealand central or government level are sold or long-term leased via public-private partnerships. Do the people currently have any vote about any kind of privatisation with their assets that they built? No, you don't. 17. Make it unlawful for politicians to knowingly misrepresent their policies prior to election at central or local government level. Is it currently illegal to lie in your election campaign? No, it isn't. 18. Make laws to protect individuals, NGOs and community-based organisations who are whistleblowing against conflicts of interest and corrupt practices at central and local government level and within the judiciary. Is there currently any protection for whistleblowers in New Zealand of any kind? No, there isn't. 19. Legislate to help stop state capture, a form of grand corruption arguably endemic in New Zealand, where vested interests get their way at the policy level before legislation is passed which serves their interest. Is there any framework of protection against foreign powers coming over and corrupting our government and passing any legislation that's favourable to them at the moment? No, there isn't. So, ladies and gentlemen, oh, my camera's out. One moment, please. There's some kind of a real difficulty with this one. Sorry about this, folks. Uno momento. You good? You good? Okay. Sorry. Okay, so big praise for Penny Bright, ladies and gentlemen. A really wonderful woman, and God rest her soul. Check out the RIP Penny Bright playlist in the on the homepage of the my YouTube channel, Mr. News Guerrilla Media, or Vinny Eastwood NZ, and just search for the Penny Bright RIP Penny Bright playlist on YouTube. That should work for you, ladies and gentlemen. All right, wow, what a great list of things to do, eh? Look at it, just boom. There's your plan to get rid of the corruption in New Zealand, and you can just Just clean your hands, and it's all done with. She's done the work, ladies and gentlemen. She really just did the work that nobody else was interested in doing. She's reading the documents. She was looking at all of the corruption. She was going to international corruption conferences and things of that nature. Just a fantastic lady. And you know, somebody once asked Keanu Reeves, they asked him, what do you think happens when you die? And he says, I think that what happens when you die is that the people who love you will miss you. And I think that's very, very true in the case of Penny. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us today. Again, this is a listener-supported broadcast. There's only one way to support my family, ladies and gentlemen, and that's to support this broadcast. My wife's not working at the moment. Of course, we're in lockdown. It's an incredibly stressful time, and I am very, very grateful for everybody's support for us during this time. All right, so again, last words and last words only, ladies and gentlemen. You feel stressed out there? Just remind yourself, where am I? I'm right here. What time is it? It's right now. Is there a threat coming to kill me in the next 60 seconds? Nope. Take a deep breath. And you're back in reality, folks. Stay calm. Stick to the facts. Stay on solid ground. And vote Advance New Zealand Public Party. There's been an official broadcast for the Vinny Eastwood Show. Thank you very much for listening. I'm not a credible journalist. I'm an incredible journalist.